Everybody ready up here? Okay. Okay, again, good evening, everybody. This is the study session for the City of Littleton for Tuesday, June 14th. The meeting was scheduled to start at 6:30, and when we assembled in the community room, we found we had some audiovisual problems. So the decision was made to move into the council chambers so that we could make sure that it's properly recorded and broadcast. The alternative would have been that we would have had to do written notes. And so we felt with the issue, it was probably worth our movement in here, even though it's a little awkward. I want to tell everybody about the sound system. We're still working on also on this one, and it seems to be much louder for me talking tonight than it has been. Please make sure when you're talking on your mics, if you can hear it through the ceiling speakers, it's probably working pretty well, but that has been an ongoing problem. Tonight's study session is regarding Urban Renewal Authority follow-up and Planning Board and LIFT. The outcome of this planning session would be to direct staff to do something. It's up to the council members present to decide what that something is. The areas that are under discussion are, and there should be maps available for everyone. There are 4 urban renewal areas that are, so to refresh your memory, the maps are available. It'd be worth trying to get them to each member in the room. They probably were left in the other room. And the other part of this is not only those 4 urban renewal areas, but what happens with LIFT. Now I'm going to have the city manager talk about these in a little bit, but I've just, as a preface to the discussion, we are not going to be able to modify the urban renewal areas as best I can determine. And if I'm corrected down the path here, there might be some further discussion of that. We have the ability to keep them or not keep them. The modification would require a vote of the people. So we'll get further clarification on that, but for your thinking process for council, it really seems to me that what we're talking about at the end of the evening is a matrix of some form that identifies 4 urban renewal areas and says that our direction to staff would be to prepare proper ordinances and information to keep them or not keep them. And that would be a decision of staff. Keeping them probably is not the problem, not keeping them is. And the same thing with LIFT. With the choices that we have there are much broader because we could make decisions about LIFT. A decision could be to keep it as it is. A decision could be to change it in some way, and a decision could be not to keep it. And I hope we have a good discussion about that. The reason that it's going to be a little difficult with the groups that we have in the room is we are with LIFT and with the planning board this evening to try to add any information that adds to that. Also Tim Flynn from South Metro. South Suburban Parks and Recs is here, and he is one of the other entities that is involved in any TIF agreement. So he's here on the opportunity perhaps to provide some information. So that's who we have in the room. Peggy? Yeah,
and you're doing this really well, but should we not have a roll call because we've got the several groups?
That's where I'm going to go right now. So,
okay, thank you.
So the very first thing that we're going to do is try to identify the people in the room that are part of those groups and have a roll call. And go ahead.
Can we turn lights up a bit?
Yeah, it's that switch up there, and I don't know how that works. There you go. So we'll start with a roll call here on the council dais. If we could start with Bill, if you'd announce yourself so that everyone knows who you are.
I'm Bill Hopping. I'm on City Council.
Jerry Valdez, District 2 City Council.
Bruce Beckman at large and the mayor.
Debbie Brinkman.
Doug Clark at large.
Peggy Cole at large.
Start down there, if you'd introduce. Planning Board. And now we have a lavalier mic down there. And so we're going to have to use the lavalier mic or that one.
Get that little portable
Dave
one.
Bolt, Planning Board.
R.C. Miles, Planning Board.
Mark Rudnicki, Planning Board.
Lynn Kruger, Planning Board.
Craig O'Rourke, left.
Justin Hay, Lift Chair.
Bruce Stallman, Planning Board.
Anyone we've missed? Okay. So if we could start, when I don't see the city manager, but I want to get a briefing from us that talks a little bit from him, if we could start on what the status, refreshing our memory of each of these 4 urban renewal areas is. And I don't see him right now.
Going into battle, isn't it?
Yeah, this is really,
got a great plan
really
coming.
demonstrating our flexibility here as we tried to fix everything. So city manager, if you could just update us with the status of those 4 urban renewal areas, and I kind of laid the groundwork for where I think we're going this evening.
Yeah. And I think, Mayor, probably having Corey Hoffman, who is the Lyft attorney, would be the best one to actually speak to that. I would just emphasize what you've identified, which is the purpose tonight is to provide some direction to staff about what you want to do with those. We've got 4 urban renewal areas. 3 of those are in place and moving forward. I think everyone's aware of the court decision related to the Enser property and the non-inclusion into the South Santa Fe plan. But if I believe what the question is from you, Mayor, is kind of what are the options going forward, correct me if I'm wrong, related to if you remove that particular plan area, what are the pros and cons to that? If you keep it in there, what are the pros and cons? What are some options related to that? And the question about the Lyft board itself.
That, and it wasn't, I don't think, clear to everyone. The blight study is a part of this entire program, and
Correct.
something happens to that blight study as we make decisions, and I think that's worth knowing up front also.
Yep, and we can make sure that Corey identifies that from a legal standpoint. What the mayor is referring to is you do a blight study or a conditions study as part of that. So clearly, if council were to eliminate any of the plan areas and start from scratch, that work would have to be done for whatever the plan area was going to be. And I think, as the mayor mentioned earlier, you would go to a vote of the people for the ratification of that plan area as well. So very valid, certainly doable. Dynamics around that we can talk about if council wants to get into the details for that. But unless you want Corey to go through each one specifically.
And if any members of council have another outcome that they would like to make sure gets addressed tonight, please speak up, because this is our meeting to talk about Lyft and urban renewal. Go ahead.
I would just ask that we give Mr. Flynn an opportunity to discuss the IGA that we have with South Suburban Parks and Rec. I reached out to Littleton Public Schools, but they weren't able to have someone come down tonight. And then we also have a letter from Urban Drainage and Flood Control regarding the IGAs that we created for the TIFs. There's been some conversation about those, and so I thought it would be a good idea to have the people who actually voted on, signed, and agreed to those. In fact, Mr. Flynn was, I think, helped write the agreement. Would be good to have some clarification there.
Okay. Well, I guess the question is, Corey, if you would address, first in general, the discussion of what it would take for a urban renewal area to be disassembled and removed, so we understand what that would be, and then I think we talk about perhaps the status of each one individually today, just briefly.
Okay. Council can abolish an urban renewal authority if all of the debts of the urban renewal authority are taken care of. I mean, that's basically the final answer, if you will, if that's council's determination. It can also determine to essentially repeal different plans and in other words, do it plan area by plan area, if you will, as opposed to abolishing the Urban Renewal Authority as a whole. As I think we've discussed several times, the job of an Urban Renewal Authority is to implement the plan of the City Council, or the plans of the City Council. So it is within the City Council's discretion, so long as the debts of the authority are taken care of, to decide what to do with those plans at the end of the day. As it relates to the 4 plans, certainly it is my opinion, and I understand that the county, as always, may disagree, but the three of the plans, the clock has started. The 4th, the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan, not including, which now we know does not include the ag land, the clock has not started. I understand that the county may have a different position based on what I consider to be a much different case involving the city of Aurora, but nonetheless, that's the status of the plan as I see them. In the absence of any urban renewal plans, if council were to determine to eliminate all of the urban renewal plans, my advice would be you don't have an urban renewal authority because you have no plan. And so no job for that urban renewal authority, no plan to implement on city council's behalf. And if you're talking about all of the options related to urban renewal, I guess I'd be compelled to give you one additional option, which is right now you have a separate board, LIFT, acting as your urban renewal authority. There is authorization in the statute to have the city council act as the urban renewal authority, but to do so would require an election.
And say that last part again, please.
To do so, to transfer governance of the urban renewal authority from LIFT to the city council would require an election.
What would that look like? What would that election be? A ballot, an actual ballot issue, and it would authorize
It would simply say,
council to have that
shall
status?
governance of the urban renewal authority be undertaken by the city council?
Any questions from council as far as we've gone? Go ahead, Jerry.
Corey, what did you say again on was it the Santa Fe plan that does not have a plan?
In my opinion, the resolution that sought to start the clock for the Santa Fe plan was defeated. So the plan is in place, but the TIF clock has not started, the 25-year TIF clock.
And whereas the others have?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And it started December 2014?
Roughly, I think.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
going on memory, but end of December, early
Thank you.
2015.
Appreciate it.
To clarify, though, the county disagrees with that, and they are actually collecting increment and depositing in for Santa Fe and depositing into the special account of the Urban Renewal Authority.
That is correct.
So one of the issues that we have immediately is a disagreement between the county and the city, and since they collect the property tax, it's likely that they'll prevail unless we want to take them to court again.
And depending on what the council decides to do with the plans in general, that is absolutely a determination that I certainly think the city council needs to make.
So if we pull the South Santa Fe plan, then there is income from that right now, right?
Correct. It's my understanding.
So is that money that's part of the authority's money, or does that have to be, where does that go back to, or?
So the money that is increment is deposited into the special fund of the authority. If the city council were to abolish a plan, again, it has to determine that the debts of, if any, of the Urban Renewal Authority have been taken care of, and then those dollars would be returned to the various taxing entities.
So the money would go back to school, South Suburban, and, okay,
Urban drainage in the city.
okay.
So what happens to the money that we've lent? Wouldn't that be satisfied first?
And that's exactly right. That's why I said the city council has to make accommodation for debts of the Urban Renewal Authority. The debts of the Urban Renewal Authority today are the loan from the city.
Right,
So yes,
okay.
that
I
has
just-
to be resolved
yeah.
first,
Yeah.
in one fashion or another.
I didn't hear you articulate it that way, so I wanted to make sure we all heard that. Thank you.
And I want to make sure that members of the planning board and LIFT get an opportunity to jump in with any questions they have. It's not just council's ball game. It's kind of awkward with us being up here and you all down there. That's not the intent. When we're in the other room, it's meant to be a inclusive discussion. So please jump in with your discussion items. And Justin, I guess my question was, something came up in a previous meeting. Please, Corey, hang for a moment, because I do have a question that I think you're going to have to resolve. And that was, it was alluded to just now, but I want to bring it up again. Collection of money and where it is and how much it is generally, knowing that that's an ongoing process. And what does it look like in terms of a debt, a refund, or those kinds of things? We're just talking generalities. I'd like to pin it down a little bit more if we know that. And I don't know if, Michael, you had a copy of the financial printout that would indicate a line item or something like that would help us maybe understand what that is, just so we can talk in real numbers here for a minute. So whoever can best answer that. I know, Justin, you didn't have that information last time, I know.
Right, and we can certainly provide that. But to my understanding, we've had a transfer into our account, our new account of the funds, which we can get the figure. I'm not sure exactly what that figure is to date, but what's your question exactly?
Well, I think part of it is we got to repay a debt first, and then we distribute. And perhaps, Corey, would that be the correct way to say that?
I think you have to account for the debt. The debt's to the city. So you can get repayment, you could excuse the debt, but you somehow have to account for the debt before if you were to abolish the Urban Renewal Authority.
Okay. One of my questions would be, and I'm directing it to Corey, you had said that you thought maybe with no plan, no need for an urban renewal authority. I'm thinking, and this is why I'm asking for your correction or input on this, having an urban renewal authority, even if it's not active, even if it's dormant, if that's the proper word, it really just doesn't have much going on. Let's say, for sake of discussion, there are no plans. I'm thinking it's to our benefit to have one in place so that if a developer was to come in with a plan that they wanted to propose as an urban renewal plan, something already exists in place, it wouldn't have to be formed up. Now, I know part of the discussion was, yeah, but then they're going to have to do a vote of the people in order to get the plan developed. They're going to have to do some things, there's a clock ticking just on the progress of their development. But I'm thinking having that plan there, or that lift already there, it sends a message or it has some value. Can you comment on that?
It would certainly be unusual, but because again, the job of an urban renewal authority ultimately is to implement the plan of the council. But having said that, I'm sure that the city council could abolish all the plans and keep an urban renewal authority. But again, it would essentially be dormant. One of the myths with urban renewal in general is that plans have a lifespan of 25 years. That's not true. Plans can live forever. It's only the TIF clock that lives for 25 years. And so that's why urban renewal authorities can certainly live beyond the 25-year TIF clock because the plan's still in place. But if all the plans are repealed, it would be unusual to still have the authority in place.
Questions of council or questions from planning or lift?
Well, one question I have is, I'm sure everybody at home is wondering, how much money has the city loaned Lyft? Give me a round number.
100,000 plus interest.
And if
Can you
150,000,
have a microphone
Maybe
over there?
we could take that lavalier up. The city manager gave up his seat for the board members.
Approximately 150,000, and of that, we haven't drawn the full 150,000 into use, but that is the loan amount
Okay.
approximately that we have with.
The
the
second
city.
question, will the city be liable if LIFT cannot meet its debt requirements? I heard forgiving of debt. Are you counting on that if LIFT is dissolved?
We certainly would want to pay back, obviously, our debts. That's been our kind of number one focus as a board. Once we advocate and move forward with a project within one of our urban renewal areas, that we could then begin paying off. That's our revenue source outside of, obviously these planned areas and URAs. But yes, that's our number one goal, to pay off our debt to the city.
Please.
My name is Lynn Kruger. I have one question just for clarification. Can the boundaries of an urban renewal be left without a plan?
Can the boundaries be left without
Can the
a,
boundaries remain, if it's there, without a plan?
I think, because I think the point you're making is a lot of work's been done to develop something there, and to
Yeah,
give it up,
there's an
we
import.
lose.
I think that what these serve as are vehicles to define a boundary, which is the plan. So just speaking out loud, I can't see the boundaries existing without without having plans. Is that answering your question? Is that where you're?
Correct. I was just curious as to whether or not the plan, the boundaries could remain dormant at that particular Santa Fe corridor and concentrate on, say, the other three at this point.
I think that raises a great question. We talked about making LIFT dormant. Is there a dormant capability of an existing area? And I'm here, what I felt you said was it either stays or it goes, but
The clock has started. So there is a project in place, which is the entire plan area. There is not an ability, because the clock has started, to sort of stop it, and then start it again at a future date.
Thought that one hadn't started yet, South Santa Fe.
Except for South Santa Fe.
That's the only one I was curious about.
So South Santa Fe, again, that would involve resolving the issue with the county about whether the clock has started or not. But certainly, it's my opinion the clock hasn't, and the city is under no obligation to start the clock at any point in time until it determines it's appropriate.
I would suggest that we have other problems with the Santa Fe plan besides the clock, and one of them is we still have an outstanding riverfront plan that's never been canceled or never been completed. And as you said, plans have a lifespan of forever, which is different than what Jim Reese told the council a year and a half ago. So at this point in time, we have the same area in two different plans, which is a rather interesting occurrence. In addition to that, the area that was excluded from the plan is the area that was TIFed. I would argue that that requires a modification or a ratification of the plan if we intend to continue to go forward with the Santa Fe plan because of that issue by itself.
I absolutely agree with you.
Plus, we have the issue of the legal descriptions currently not being correct on all four plans, not just Santa Fe plan. So we have some issues with the plans as they stand.
so just, Doug, to add to that, so if the Santa Fe plan, if the decision was, let's try to keep that Santa Fe plan alive, your feeling is it would require a vote of the people because it's only a modification that would allow it to happen. Is that the way?
I would say that that's one example. You have already an area of the Santa Fe plan that's in an existing urban renewal plan that was never closed out. I don't know how you handle that. You've got, obviously, the TIF issue of the county collecting property tax and depositing the special account. So if the council were to want to continue the Santa Fe plan, there's a number of issues that I think need to be addressed on that plan, and one of them, obviously, I think, is need to be ratified with a vote, which would be a very interesting election to have.
Corey, what's your analysis of the fact that the riverfront plan is still open and
There is no outstanding debt of the riverfront. Everything has been resolved. I don't think the fact that the plan area exists in the world is of any legal effect at all.
But you just said 5 minutes ago that plans have a lifespan of forever.
Absolutely, but I don't think there is any impediment to having sort of an overlay plan. There is nothing in the statute that prevents that.
So you're claiming there's nothing in the statute that prevents two different plans covering the same area?
Correct.
So which goals and objectives would prevail?
It would have to be reconciled by the city council in terms of how it asks its urban renewal authority to implement the plan. I would suggest that the Santa Fe plan is a much more current and recent pronouncement of the legislative determination of the city council, and that's how I'd advise the urban renewal authority.
One comment, you can sit down, Corey, this is just a comment for council, and then we need to make sure we get some more questions answered. The reason we're sitting here discussing this that I think is significant and worth putting to the front is whether we loved these, hated these, thought they were going to do good things or not. And I think everyone on council was concerned about what would be in the best interest of the city of Littleton. When the vote of the people was that they wanted to vote as on any modifications of any plans, it was clear to me that we might find ways that we could get away with a technical reason why maybe a vote wouldn't be needed, but that the real message that the community sent was, we really don't want to see that happen without a vote of the people. And I think that the subset of that was it involved taxes, and that people have an opportunity to have input to tax issues. So if it hasn't been clear to folks watching or folks that have been involved in this is not an attempt to try to undo opportunities for development. It's not a close the doors on Littleton issue. In fact, I think almost to a person, anybody that I've talked to who's been concerned about these plans has said they're not necessarily against urban renewal, they're against the way this was done or the way it ultimately arrived at, or the changes that they're concerned about, the changes that vote of the people had. I think that what we need to discuss this evening, if we're to that point, is, and if I could have maybe the city manager talk about them, there's some plans here that even under maybe the best light might not ever proceed, but there's pieces of opportunities around the city that might be, for the next group of people considering urban renewal, might be of validity. They might be something that the people want to vote for. They like the way it looks. They see some opportunities, et cetera. So I do want to just talk for a moment about each of these plans, kind of the risks and rewards of them that we've talked about a little bit, and then talk about that idea of what a next step might be if it were to come our way. That's a long statement, but I think it's really important because I'm not anti-development or growth, but I'm very concerned about where these plans went, given what happened with the vote and with time and with different interpretations. So.
Great, thanks, Mayor. So what the mayor's referring to is conversations that we have all had, and he and I have had over the period of time that we've been working on this. And if you think about the area, so take away the politics of the use of the TIF and all that kind of stuff, and just look at how the Urban Renewal Authority and would partner with a development, whether it's our project in terms of public works improvements or a development project. We have always said fairly loudly that the two main areas where we thought that development would truly benefit on a large scale with urban renewal was the Answer property, which is Mineral in Santa Fe, and the Dish Network, which is currently under the dual plan, as Councilmember Clark pointed out, which is at Bowles and Santa Fe. Both of those, the reason for that, one is if we were to relocate the call center, the relocation costs could be associated with that increment. And clearly on the ENSA property, Mineral in Santa Fe, you've got substantial public improvements because it's dirt at this point. And as I have said in the past, money is cheap right now, but if you were going to utilize the benefits of urban renewal, you really would want to bond under that circumstance. And you're not going to bond, depending upon who you talk to, it's probably going to be $5 or $10 million in that sense because money is cheap and there's other ways to get it. But if you're going to leverage it, you'd probably do it in that front. Clearly, the Santa Fe corridor has limitations and challenges, as Council has been discussing for the last few moments. So you move over to the Bellevue Federal Arena. That one, I think there's less benefit from that, just in terms of the public improvements that are necessary. You're probably talking in hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars relative to those improvements. The Columbine Square property, the road's in relatively good shape over there. There are some drainage issues, but you're probably not putting in a light, so you've got some curb and gutter, some landscaping, that type of thing. So may or may not be benefit to come in there. We believe, from a staff perspective, those guys are going to want to do a rezoning. We've said before, we'll say it again, and I think Justin said it at the last study session, all connection, all communication starts with land use. It does not start with going to the lift board on the financial side. It always starts with the land use. If you can't build the building you want at the location you want and have the use you want, there's no point to go and try to figure out those financials. Just makes no sense, clearly. So strong opportunity there in terms of redevelopment of that site. That would come through a rezone, but not a lot of benefit from a lift perspective. If you move over to Councilmember Valdez's area, Littleton Boulevard and the Broadway area, I think you have probably an opportunity, not on a bonding level, but just much more on the smaller scale. You've got a new individual or investment firm recently bought the antique area, the old Safeway. They've already indicated an interest at some point to do some redevelopment in that area. That's a challenge in working with Inglewood. You probably have a light. You've certainly got some drainage issues. You've got landscaping, parking lots, a lot of the public improvements. So not big dollars, but also not the big kind of corporate thing, but more of the small local person who's trying to make good on their particular investment. And there's examples of that, I think, as you run up and down Littleton Boulevard and Broadway. So you kind of move from the Santa Fe corridor on that larger scale to one that's probably more got some political connection on the Bellevue, to something that probably has some benefit that ultimately results in a lot of what the council's been talking about, maintaining our character and charm along Littleton and Broadway, and really seeing a lot of that stuff spruced up, and this is a tool for that. So that's what the mayor and I had previously talked and thought about and we have done that as well as the council, and I think, again, Justin brought it up at the last one in terms of how you think about these 4 different plans.
Questions?
So, and Corey, this may be you again, get your exercise up to the mic, but is one of the possible scenarios that you put lift on hold? We haven't had activity, and a lot of the criticism has been that we're paying a lot for consultants, we have fees outgoing for personnel that are involved in that whenever we have a meeting, as what it amounts to, so that the lift board could conduct their own meetings. I think they could probably conduct their own training. Have people in occasionally or do self-training methodology and stop the bleeding financially of outflow and continue to collect increment to pay some of that debt back in a way that is less painful than some other methods. What are our options there, as far as the main thing would be to stop the bleeding, and not, if we eliminate everything, my fear is that means that this council would be saying that they are approving something that is going to have an impact on all future councils in Littleton. And I don't know about the other 6, but I don't feel smart enough to make a decision that impacts all councils down the road.
I'm not sure what it means to put it on hold. I would suggest to you that certainly in the last several months, LIFT hasn't been incurring costs because there haven't been development proposals in front of it for it to act on. The clock has started. So in that sense, and there is debt. It's debt to the city currently. So it is able to continue to collect increment, which it is doing. This, and we've talked about definitions a lot over the past several months, and the definition of a project is undertakings and activities. And I think what the city manager was talking about, if you look at Littleton Boulevard and you look at Broadway, for example, is that there may be an opportunity for additional undertakings and activities, whether it's small public improvement projects in conjunction with the development. If it was council's direction, the LIFT board could be there to react to those and implement your policies. If you say hang back and react essentially when we tell you to do so, that's an option as well, whether it's on certain plan areas or all plan areas. So yeah, I think you have all of those options, but you do, the 25 years on the 3 plan areas has started.
Right.
I have a quick comment. Oh, go ahead.
And I was going to say, and that you can't stop.
So can I ask clarification? So we have money that's being collected, going to LIFT, and it's repaying debt.
There is a debt to be repaid, which is the loan to the city.
And potentially could be used for some of the things you were talking about through LIFT. But that same money, if we just collect it to the city, because we're going to collect it anyway right now, the city itself could just directly do those things.
Only as to the city's component of the property tax. Remember that the TIF that LIFT is collecting is not just from the city, it's TIF from the other taxing entities.
Right, so they can do, if they got that money, they'd be able to do some things that right now they might want to do, but the TIF money is being diverted. The increment is being diverted.
I would take issue with your terminology of diverted because that the statute says that.
I don't mean that.
Well, but
it's
that's.
It's a word. I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm just trying to say it tracks one way or another. So potentially.
TIF is being collected because the state statute authorizes TIF to be collected and provided to the Urban Renewal Authority and deposited into the special fund.
No, I hear that. I was not trying to be contentious, so.
Isn't this Dave Bolt over here? I haven't figured out how to use this thing yet. Isn't the real benefit to the TIF, though, to get some projects going and done so that the increment can be significant and really drive some future projects?
Certainly. That's certainly one policy view that is a benefit of urban renewal, definitely.
I have a few quick comments just from some of the things that have been said tonight, and maybe reiterate some items we talked about in our last study session. First would be, I'm really glad we're doing these. I think since the vote on 300, I think that from the community standpoint, now from council, inputting and why we're here today has been a good process, because now there were obviously items with urban renewal as well as our board that we need to kind of hone in on, and now we're kind of focusing a little bit more physically in these URAs in particular. I think first, dormancy with the TIF clock running and other things, I think that that speaks a message to the community at large that are looking to maybe invest here in Littleton. I think being dormant may be just kind of another hit to what urban renewal is trying to do, and that's to enhance our community in many ways. I think we've heard over the last few years, good or bad. And I think that the process of where we've been as a board, there just has not been advocacy yet. I think, now having the planning board here tonight, talking with council, these are good steps to be able to get to what exactly we should be doing as a LIFT board and as a community within these areas. And so I would say, just being dormant, it kind of speaks a little bit in itself that maybe it's something that might not be a positive direction in this community. So I would just want to kind of speak to that. And now with Planning Board, I was able to have a great study session months back with you guys, just to kind of talk about how we can start working together. But I think that now that we've had some of these a little bit of roadblocks, we've been a little bit of purgatory here, and we've been kind of holding back on our meetings and trying to understand where we're at. So just speaking on behalf of our board, I know that this was a difficult week for all of us to get here. Unfortunately, a lot of us were out of town, but speaking on behalf of our board, I know that we're all, looking for those items we want to work with council and the community at large on to make these great places. And maybe it's not every parcel, as Michael mentioned, he going through is maybe what we need to do with planning and council and saying, well, what exactly in these areas are realistic? And let's filter it down from a land use and planning perspective and from a community perspective. And then, we can begin without, not knowing what our future is, start continuing into the community and moving forward in a positive direction. So I just wanted to make that comment, some reiterating from that, then obviously speaking for our board tonight on that level. And then also we have a little bit more information that on the cash side of things, we have about $39,000 in cash left from the loan amount from the city at this time. And we've collected approximately $155,000 in property taxes. But we'll get those items a little bit further. And then we already mentioned the $150,000 loan we have that we've been focused to pay back. So just wanted to make those brief comments.
Appreciate that. And I'd love to, I think it's great, again, that we do have the three entities working together on this, because it's really, I think, key. We're all involved in this at one point or another. When something would arrive, we'd all be part and parcel of working through that. And I also think it's important to note that, thanks for mics, that 300 did not eliminate urban renewal. The writers of 300, the proponents of 300 did not, they could have, but they did not. And the people who voted for 300 clearly understood that they weren't voting for the removal of urban renewal as a tool. They've added conditions to it, which I think, obviously, we've talked about that, and those are conditions that we would respect, clearly. But I think it is an opportunity for the community to work together on some of the things that we agree would be good for the community. In addition to that, we've had some conversations at some study sessions regarding the TIF money and how that doesn't, and Corey, you can straighten this up if I'm getting this wrong, but that we can actually do some of our own capital improvements with money collected by the TIF, regardless of if there's a project. Correct? Oh, here we go. It was that last part I said, right? Okay.
Doing a capital project of what would otherwise be a city project in an urban renewal area is an undertaking and activity, and that is the very definition of a project. So it is absolutely authorized.
Okay, thank you.
More comments?
Yeah. Give us an example of a capital project that you think would be done in an urban renewal area with TIF.
I think one that we bantered about a bit was the bridge on Broadway connecting the trails, the Lee Gulch. We talked about a bridge there or a tunnel, and that was something that would be an appropriate use of the funds. Name one. I left my shopping list at home.
Is that in an urban renewal area? Lee Gulch crosses Broadway down by Littleton Hospital.
So that's the question. Can you do it anywhere in the city, or must it be within the defined areas? Corey, I'm sorry you keep jumping up and down, but I'm sorry, Doug, I Just
Yeah, no,
so these
that's an
sort of-
excellent question, because
The test is, does it prevent blight, eliminate the spread of blight? If you can make the connection with an improvement that is outside of an urban renewal area, there's nothing in the urban renewal law that says it has to be in there, but you have to show the connection. You have to show that it is preventing the spread of blight. So I don't know how proximate this would be. But certainly, other examples of public improvements that communities may do could be landscaping improvements along your rights-of-way. So if you wanted to do landscaping along Littleton Boulevard or Broadway, if there was drainage projects, if there were sidewalk improvement projects, undergrounding of utilities, those are all the types of projects that could use urban renewal funds.
So if I could follow up on that, in a technical sense, if you had, let's say, a large population of people living in apartments, across the street was an urban renewal project, some retail area, you could build a bridge over to get the population over there. So it doesn't necessarily have to be specifically in the defined yellow line,
I think
as
that's a
long
good
as it
example.
helps that yellow line.
That's a good example, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
But you would have to show how the bridge is going to, for instance, remediate the fire hazard that exists. That was one of the conditions of blight in the urban renewal area. We've got so many problems with all of these urban renewal plans. The first one being Resolution 88 that was passed by the council that said the council wasn't going to move forward without the approval and support of all the taxing entities. We don't have the approval and support of all the taxing entities. We're missing half of them. The legal description on all 4 urban renewal plans excludes the streets and right-of-ways. So we would have to make a case on how we're going to spend dollars that we've collected in TIF areas in an area outside of the urban renewal area when that was excluded from the urban renewal area when the council passed the plan. We are using these letters of consent to return the money when urban renewal law specifically calls for revenue sharing. And we've decided to bypass that with letters of consent because we don't want to go back to the voters with a ratification of the plan. And we keep getting completely contradictory opinions and advice on what can or can't happen, and one of them is whether the urban renewal plans expire after 25 years. Jim Reese stood right up here and said the plans automatically expire after 25 years, and that's why the riverfront plan didn't matter, which was obviously bunked because the riverfront had been in operation for longer than 25 years. So I think making efforts to try and massage these around in the condition that they are right now is basically an insult to the voters. If we actually have a blight that we want to cure, then what we should do is form an urban renewal authority, declare what the blight is, identify the area, and then come up with a plan to fix the blight. Right now, what we've done is we've blighted basically everything, including housing authority property. And Mr. Hancock gets offended when I point out to him that his property is blight, but that is one of the properties or some of the properties that were specifically identified in the condition study that the council used as part of the resolution to pass the Littleton Boulevard plan. So I think what we need to do is go back to the beginning, identify exactly what it is that we want to do, create the urban renewal plans correctly, reform LIFT if that point comes, and get staff members on LIFT that are actually competent. I don't mean board members, I mean staff members, because you don't have them now, and go forward. But what we have right now are 4 plans, one of which has been basically disabled by the court case that we lost suing the county. We've got legal descriptions that don't match the text in the urban renewal plans. We've got some pieces of property
that are indicated in the map that aren't indicated in the legal description. We don't even know actually which property's in the urban renewal area and which property isn't in the urban renewal area, and to just try to bulldoze our way forward from this point when it's so obviously messed up, I think is the improper course of action.
Jerry.
Thank you. I've been a proponent of this urban renewal thing all along. What I would like us to consider, all of us, is are there any plans here or pieces of plans that we're okay with? Maybe it's not 100%, but we're okay with. And for instance, I'm thinking of the Columbine Square plan. While I may not like all the boundaries, I may be okay with a good part of it, even though the urban renewal information that we've received from time to time was not always accurate. That's for doggone sure. But I would like at some point, at least for council at least, say, are we okay with a plan? And there's other parts that, there's issues, obviously, the Santa Fe plan, there's lots of issues there. We may want to look at the Littleton Boulevard plan, we may want to look at the North Broadway plan. But can we at least eliminate something to say for the, wherever you two guys are, there you are, is there something that these guys can at least, and women, can they at least focus on and try to make work as is without having to reinvent the wheel on that particular area?
So, to Jerry's comment, and Corey again, but if we find something in the existing plans that has value, we really can't make that decision because we're modifying. Is that, or help me out with that. If with Jerry's idea of find something of value potentially, can we actually do that?
It depends. If you are looking at piecemealing each and every plan, then yes, I would suggest that's going to be a substantial modification. If what Councilmember Valdez is talking about is keeping, for example, the North Broadway plan and the Littleton Boulevard plan and repealing, or in the Columbine Square plan, whichever, but keeping plans that are in place in their entirety and repealing others in their entirety, that wouldn't require a vote.
Corey, if there's corrections that need to be made to these plans in the interest of what the plan represents, what's for example, a legal description, if there was a zero left off of, a northing and easting or what have you, if there's a correction, an error in the interest of the plan, what constitutes an adjustment or an amendment to what, just starting on the elementary level of that?
I mean, the law defines a substantial modification. It is not that precise. What you're talking about, I don't think would qualify if it was an adjustment to a legal description based on a bearing being off, for example, that was just a minor technical error. If you're actually changing, adding property, taking out property that is significant, substantial, under the language of the statute, it may be. You have to look at each one on its merits, and so it's hard for me to give a blanket opinion not knowing what we're talking about. But what I do know is that if you were to keep an existing plan in its entirety, for example, Columbine Square, you could do so. That doesn't require, you could repeal plans in whole. You can keep plans in whole. If you want to start parsing out pieces of the plans, piece by piece, we'd have to look at that individually.
But essentially, we can highlight properties within our boundary and begin the further analysis, which is our process that we're talking about with council, planning board, staff, et cetera, and begin to analyze that particular property within the boundary and move forward with it, Columbine Square or what have you, whatever highlighted component
And again,
we're
you
looking
have
at.
projects that have been approved by council.
Right.
They can certainly decide to repeal them, but you have projects that are approved, and in those project areas, there are potential undertakings and activities you could look at if that was the council direction.
Okay, just looking at the clock, we've been talking almost an hour. I would like to
So I had a
begin to
question.
get let's get some firming questions up here and try to decide maybe where direction we're going, ask planning. Let's see what the thoughts are on this, because as I said at the beginning, I think Corey's supported it, the existing plans can stay or go, but the challenge is in, other than that choice. And we should talk about that at the same, if LIFT stays alive, perhaps awaiting something, and talk about that a little bit, because I think that's where our choices are. So questions and concerns, and maybe ideas. Peggy?
Yep, I had I guess, a point of clarification. I didn't reread all the statutes for tonight's meeting. I think I've read them all before, all of them, 3 or 4 times. But, so something that was said tonight is confusing to me, because every time I read them, they're confusing. But to talk about taking TIF money that's already somewhere and planting flowers or whatever somewhere doesn't seem to fit what we've repeatedly been told, that it's used for gap financing. That somehow that doesn't make sense. Because the gap financing was supposedly to help somebody with a project, and they couldn't get the financing for it on their own. All of it. Am I misremembering something that was repeatedly said?
They are simply different uses, different authorized uses. They are both intended, if it is part of implementing council's plan, they are different ways to remediate blight. Gap financing is a very common way, but another way to do it is to do public improvements or landscaping, for example, that are intended to trigger the development. So it doesn't have to be providing dollars to developers as gap financing. It can be doing projects independently with intent to either clean it up, remediate blight, or incentivize, trigger development, make it a better place so that when people are looking at that area, they look at it differently and say, I want to be there.
So maybe during break, I assume we'll have a break, you could point that part of the code out,
Sure.
statute out, so that I actually can see it. I do better seeing stuff.
Happy to
and-
do so.
Thank you.
Other comments? I would say that my position is, I believe we're in one of those situations where the more we try to put Band-Aids and fixes on it, the worse we get. And again, it's where we are now is with the decision to keep a plan or eliminate a plan. I'm not comfortable keeping any of the 4 plans at all. And I believe we still have a discussion to go with LIFT, but I'm not comfortable with LIFT taking any more tax money to operate it. I really would want it to be dormant and not be doing that, but that's my position.
Well, I think that there are at least 2 plans in here that are, at this point, would serve a benefit. I think that particularly the Littleton Boulevard plan, and we're not talking about coming in and, bulldozing 70 acres and creating a big, huge thing. We're talking about smaller parcels along here. And a lot of it is stuff that I think having the opportunity to provide that tool to people, to developers, or even to some of the business owners that may want to do something, enhance their place. There's a lot of places on here that there's empty lots next to some of these businesses. It may be an opportunity for, people might start feeling like there's what they thought they could never do, they now have an opportunity to do. We spent a great deal of time, a great deal of public outreach. I understand that there's urban renewal is a difficult thing to understand. It's very complicated. The legalities of it, they use words, they call things plans and projects that are crisscross from the way we would normally refer to a plan or a project. So it's challenging in that regard, but I believe that we had some, I think Corey has done an incredible job helping guide us through this, and an awful lot of time was spent on this, including outreach. Whether or not everybody likes it or not, I don't think that all of these plans are horrible and need to go away. I think that there is workability on at least a couple of them. I'm not that interested in keeping the Santa Fe plan. I think it's got problems of its own, and I also think that even though the Enser property would probably be the one that would qualify most for it, it's probably going to be the most challenging anyway. So I definitely have an interest in keeping at least a couple. I think Littleton Boulevard and the North Broadway, I think it provides great opportunity. Have heard from businesses, a couple of businesses along the Littleton Boulevard who said that it was something they were interested in talking to the city about, and were anxious to hear what would happen this evening. So I think it's worth keeping those, taking a look at them. The dormancy thing, it's probably something to pursue. I don't know that collecting the increment while we have everything on hold is a good idea. If we're going to collect the increment, let's keep things alive. I think keeping the lift board engaged is a good idea. I know that the lift board is very active in looking at bringing opportunities into the city, which is very advantageous. So that's my take on it at this point. I'd like to hear from the planning board also.
Any other comments up here before we move it around some more?
Yeah. I'd like to back it up a little bit because I think this is a policy decision, and I'd like to get out of the weeds of legal descriptions and minor modifications or whatever that Corey seems to think are not things that have to go to a vote because they weren't substantial in terms of what they did. But what can urban renewal really do in terms of Littleton? What do we want in terms of a city down the road? And our goal, as Mayor Beckman said right after he took office as mayor, was to look 10 to 20 years down the road. We have to look long-term, and it's most of us in the room, and the average age in here is not 23, most of us will not be here when a lot of these goals that would be put in place by urban renewal would be realized. But it is a way to leverage community development goals. For example, if you have two areas that are not contingent with one another, if you use urban renewal in each one of those, it can stimulate development along that entire corridor that is in a way that's advantageous to the entire community. And you can leverage it. You can get concessions out of a developer because of urban renewal usage that they wouldn't otherwise be required to use in a case of just going straight to the zoning. And that's very important to remember because there are specific areas where you may want community culture to look a little bit different than that zone would normally call for. So you can do that with urban renewal. You can stimulate housing. We have a housing study that we're trying to get done, and it can be done to stimulate housing to meet our seniors' needs. We have a lot of issues. We had an event lately where some seniors were displaced. We need to have a complete diversity of housing. We need to have a diversity of retail and other things, and this all helps to stimulate a community for long-term success. Things are going to happen. There seems to be a feeling that if things are blocked, things won't happen. But what that does is really create a negative void that things come into that are not done in the proper way. In the big picture, urban renewal gives us the ability to stimulate the kind of development that we define. And there's nothing about a change in a plan that doesn't say or that defines that we can't sit as a council and say, we would like you to use urban renewal only to stimulate senior housing. That's not a change in a plan. We can pick another area and we can say, we want this to be retail. We want you to go out and it looks like a housing area, but the neighbors want retail here. And we will use urban renewal in a positive way to attract the right developer into that, to give the community what we want. And that's the real use of urban renewal. And it gets kind of wearisome to hear people drill into the weeds, and the weeds are important, but weeds are also pullable and fixable, and we can get insecticide. In fact, we can go over to one of the urban renewals areas and get insecticides at O'Toole's or pesticides and fix it. But I think we need to remember, if we want to have control over our community, if we want it to emerge over the long run the way we all want it to see, whatever all of us want to define that as, this is a tool that should not be thrown out for us and all future councils, because it is a very high hurdle with 300 to get it back. Make no mistake about that. 300 was a very high hurdle to get anything done down the road. So a couple of things there. This is an effective long-term community tool, and it handicaps, if it's thrown out, our future citizens, our future councils, and the future of this city. So I think we ought to figure out, I would propose that we keep this. If maybe we want to direct staff to come back with modifications, or have a couple of council members work with a couple of people from planning and LIFT to see what something would look like. But to keep this alive, stop the bleeding, let's fix some of the pieces that have been most criticized, but let's not throw out a very useful tool for our community.
Comments? Peggy?
With all due respect, Bill, Littleton's had 2 urban renewal plans, one still existing. The college was part of a larger urban renewal plan, wonderful vision, and it didn't come to pass. We have the college, yes, but what was intended to happen with it didn't happen. We have the riverfront property. What was intended to happen didn't happen. You can have wonderful plans and make a really good argument, but they don't necessarily happen. The city has some other ways, in my view, to stimulate some things that make this place start happening, or developers or whoever it is saying, you guys are crazy. I don't know, but whatever. I'm thinking this is, we don't need this. I agree with Bruce.
Can I just ask a question on the blight piece, the determination, conditions of blight? If let's say we do away with one of the plans, and let's say moments later, a developer comes in and says, well, I got this one small area. And so we begin the process again. Can he use the old blight study, the old condition study? Could it be given to, is there a way to use some value of what we've done already?
Those blight studies will always be public records, and so certainly someone can use them as a tool to evaluate whether a property in whatever that its current condition is blighted, but the study will have to be a new study.
Thank you.
I think that, I think that technically what we have is a postponed ordinance on first reading that has been postponed to some date in July 5th. So we actually have a ordinance that was presented to council that's been postponed to July 5th that describes abolishing the Urban Renewal Authority and what's the correct term for getting rid of the plans? Revoking the plans. So at this point in time, that's what's going to come back to us on July 5th.
And at that point, we can amend whatever.
Make whatever
It is.
changes we want to.
Yep.
Either at first or second reading or both.
Mr. Bolton?
First, I guess, try and not make extra noise. First, I wanted to just say that I think the word blight is a very charged and unfortunate word. I know that the state has used it in defining urban renewal, but it just seems to be a focal point of people who are, it just puts, I think the properties that are in the plans now, maybe except for Santa Fe, which is kind of in hold anyway, are not blighted in the traditional sense of the term. They just, some of them may want to be enhanced. Some of them are maybe blighted, but I just think if there's any way to stop using that word, I think it would be a positive move forward. That being said, I think especially the Broadway and Littleton Boulevard plans, Columbine seems to be kind of a maybe an add-on that is pretty insignificant. But Littleton and Broadway, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to look at the comp plan and see some of the goals. I'm not sure why I'm. What the problem is. Am I too close?
Yes.
Okay, I'm afraid that I'm not being. I can't hear myself.
Stop being afraid.
Anyway, so we have a tremendous opportunity to enhance those areas. Look at the comp plan, and we can see the goals of the comp plan, like a distinctive Littleton, a connected Littleton, and look at ways to maybe increase access for pedestrian and bicycles, increase the landscape so that those corridors look nicer, because they almost look like industrial areas, even though they're mostly retail. So personally, I'm in favor of the plans, and I think they're a tremendous opportunity to be able to use some money to be able to make our city look better, look nicer, not tear things down. I don't think anybody is recommending that. The only people who are saying that are the people who are against the plans to begin with. Not the only people, but that rhetoric is being used to tear down the plans, and I think, like I said, they're a tremendous opportunity to do some good.
Any other comments?
Yes. Planning Board, we've been looking at this for almost 2 years now. I always felt that Planning Board was superfluous to the outcome. We were in the write-up, the consultant had said we'd already approved it when we were just looking at it 2 weeks later for the first time. That tells you what they thought of the Planning Board. I boiled down everything into the following two questions. The city stepped in what? And how do you clean up your shoes here? I've lambasted Lyft from day one. I'm not in the same league as some people sitting behind me, but I've done my best. Boilerplate documents, ham-handed process, runaway bulldozer, little buy-in from citizens, a Ricker Cunningham consultant, arrogance and unfamiliarity with Littleton that bordered unqualified. With all that said, you used the word tool. It's tempting to keep the tool, but Lyft is using basically a sledgehammer for the tool, not a delicate hand tool. I like the idea of choosing one project where Lyft can prove themselves. They haven't proved themselves at all. They have no projects. They're spending a lot of money and they haven't done anything. And they're the son of Riverfront before my time, and I've heard that Riverfront went through millions of dollars, and projects all failed. I like Jerry's idea of perhaps paring down, if that's possible legally, pare down the list of the number of properties within each district, or perhaps get rid of a district. Littleton seems to be right now thriving, buildings going on, the market is deciding what's right. But let Lyft prove themselves. A couple of examples, Columbine Square would be one that Jerry mentioned. Mineral Light Rail Station would be another example. Puma's vision is their economic vision for the station. Their ideas are breathtaking, but it would require city money, public money. And so I'm tempted to get rid of the whole mess and clean my shoes, but there are some projects, Norgren, for instance, et cetera, Woodlawn, perhaps in the future, this tool can be used, but a light tool, not a sledgehammer tool.
Please.
I've been in communities where urban renewal was adopted, and these are very, very definite growing pains. In a sense, I think Littleton has moved from small town to city in a way. I mean, you are facing large problems in the future. You're limited by size, you're limited by available open land, and in reality, you have to be careful now what you choose to do with your city. I agree with most everyone that there are projects or boundaries on here that are not helpful right now, but there are certainly some that can truly benefit from having long-range planning on it. I don't know enough about LIFT to comment one way or the other on it. You do need an urban renewal authority. You all take on a great deal of work right now. I have a feeling that taking that on too would be an incredible situation. What I have learned in the past from communities that I've worked in is urban renewal does pay off if it's based appropriately to begin with. And part of that is getting rid of what doesn't work right now, which is, my opinion, Santa Fe. You've got three different things. You've asked the planning board to look at Santa Fe. You've asked the planning board to look at Bellevue. You've got an entire group looking at Santa Fe, which these boundaries may not apply to by the time it's done. Columbine is a single parcel, or pretty close to a single parcel, that the owner has apparently not been interested in doing anything with up until this point. You know, I think knowing what they want to do would tell you whether or not that should still be part of the plans. But the other two plans are important. Bellevue is not so much, but the other two are, Broadway and Littleton Boulevard. They're your core, and how they develop now and in 20 years is going to be critical. And if you don't have control of that now, you're not going to get it again.
Thank you. Additional comments, Justin?
Yeah, I think all the comments tonight, as I mentioned earlier, are great. I'm a fifth generation guy here in Littleton, and I've seen a lot with this community. I've learned a lot from my family about Littleton. I've learned that when you put resources down on the land, whether it's, on a piece of property or putting together tools like this map here, and sometimes maps are hard to read, and like a comp plan, when it encompasses your property, you start to question what's going on there. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be involved with LIFT when Ricker Cunningham and others were really doing the groundwork getting to this level. But I feel like I'm fortunate that I'm here now to be able to utilize all the resources that were put forward to get here. And so I've heard tonight some great comments on, yeah, we did step in something, and I'm an advocate not to just throw it all out. I'm an advocate now that we have these resources around these tables to be able to piece by piece, property by property, and community input on each level and each parcel, discuss how we can really revitalize this community. Because I look at these areas I look at these as canvases that already have some artwork. But just like the Sistine Chapel, you have to go back in. I look at these these properties, a lot of these in these areas are great to me. I love them. But I think that I can see just in my industry, the economy is great today, but I can see where things are going just by projecting to how our community is aging ineffectively. I think you can do some loops around the community and see that. So I really care about each one of these areas, and I am strongly open to, pulling some off. For example, Santa Fe and others that have had some problems based on our comments tonight. But I really think that we have some groundwork here, and we have the filtration system set up here with our city government to look at each one of these parcels and make decisions on a case by case. I don't think we should get, again, I think Bill said it as well, caught in the weeds too much. I think we can move forward here and not just throw it all out. And, I'm into paying off debt. And so that's what our board is willing to do. But as I mentioned, we've been kind of taking steps back in increments because everybody's not on the same page to a certain degree. So I'm hoping come July or kind of after some thoughts been put together after this meeting and beyond that there is some semblance of urban renewal that is left in the community so we can do it right. I think that we have the great bones here to do it. So on behalf of our board, I think that's where we stand, and we hope we can continue to work with you guys moving forward.
Thank you, Justin. Any final comments from anyone? Because we are running out of time for this portion.
Yeah, if I can ask a quick question of somebody from LIFT, are there any specific small projects that are being considered along the lines of what Mark is describing? You got to walk before you can run. Are there things that are, size-wise such that you could demonstrate, here's a great project that would benefit the community, maybe it's pedestrian access or safety improvements, something that is tangible that we could see, you go do it, and it's successful? Are there any projects of that nature that are being considered?
Are you talking about, are there actual developers with investors involved on projects? Or are you talking about improvements and enhancements that are going to be used by the tax increment for?
Yeah, either existing or, I'm looking right now at the very first page across from Harlow Park. I coached baseball there, and thinking of that little center with Walter's Pizza and, kids running across the street, it's dangerous. And,
Right.
I don't know, is that project in particular, if you looked at, sidewalk improvements or crossing improvements or anything of this nature that are expensive, to invest in on behalf of the city, that maybe LIFT could step in and do something that we would tangibly see benefit from?
Sure. To answer straight out, we don't have specific projects at this time that we've been focusing on. I think Michael Penny, city manager, mentioned a lot of sites that have interested parties within these urban renewal areas that may provide that funding through TIF and other mechanisms to look at projects like that. But I think that you bring up a great point, and I think it was mentioned earlier whether or not going Lee Gulch underneath Broadway or not could be used. Probably not, because or we would have to prove how it benefits the blight or what have you. But I think that there is a list of items and probably a hierarchy in each area that can be highlighted and discussed. I mean, that hasn't been analyzed to that point. And I mentioned I wish I was involved earlier, because I think that's a great laundry list within each of these areas on the public improvement side of what could be done and needs to be done based on, what could happen on the development and private side of within these areas. So you bring up a good point. I think we should come up with lists and items, whether it's a open source, from the community and they're putting input in, and we start to itemize some of those projects and components that we could potentially enhance.
When again, I think some of my observation is that it has been poorly explained as to how there would be a tangible benefit and how the TIF would actually repay those improvements. So, for example, if retail sales were to improve at that center by way of things that you do, connectivity to Harlow Park, events occurring at Harlow Park that then would drive increased retail sales, that drives the TIF repayment. So I think there's things you could do, things that
Certainly.
LIFT could do, that would provide some evidence of the value that you can bring to the community. And to Bill's point, I mean, these are very well-used concepts elsewhere. You look in the city of Denver, Rhino area, the redevelopment of the Stockyard facility, the I-70, all these types of projects the city of Denver can't pay for it. So, looking at financing structures that help to pay for it to benefit the community. That's the concept here. So to throw all this out, I think would be a grave mistake, is my opinion.
Further comments, Bruce?
So, a rose by any other name, I guess, is what I'm thinking of at the moment. The TIF is nothing, it never has been anything but a financing mechanism to help the city get projects done where it theoretically makes sense to do projects. Not every project is going to be successful. However, we used a slight variation as a community on the King Super Center at Littleton and Broadway, which was a sales tax shareback. It's not the TIF structure, it's not urban renewal per se, but it is a public-private partnering financing arrangement of which TIF would fall in a similar bucket. That particular project, I think, ultimately got the community an exceptional retail center that I don't think anybody can say with certainty would have happened absent the city's participation in that project. Maybe the project we're all sort of searching for here might be the Sham property. My understanding is that their Mini dealership is going to go away. The Honda dealership's going to Highlands Ranch, and BMW is already gone. The market may say, hey, it's great to have another car dealership in that location, and maybe that's okay. But we've talked a lot over the years about Broadway and Littleton Boulevard being sort of a gateway to the community, and with some creativity working with the development community over there, along with a variety or any alternatives from a financing standpoint that could potentially facilitate a cool project, one of which might be TIF, one of which might be sales tax shareback, other fee rebates, so forth and so on. There's lots of variations. The point is, maybe it makes sense, and maybe it was, I don't know who said it, maybe Dave or Mark, maybe take a shot at one, give them a shot at seeing, give them 12 months and see if they can put something together and try it. I mean, it's not, at the moment, there's no harm, no foul right now. There's nothing that is major negative to leaving the thing in place for another 12 months or whatever. And if nothing happens, it can always be killed later or put into dormancy later and with the same effect. So that's just a thought.
And we're getting ready to wrap up because of our time, sir.
I'll just make a quick comment to use a turn of phrase of Councilmember Hopping. I would challenge Lyft to get into the weeds and not look at this from a 10,000-foot level, but pick one project. Don't make any lists. Just pick a project and get working on it and do it quickly because time's limited, it sounds like.
Okay, well, I think we're getting ready to wrap up. I just have one comment that I want to restate that somebody else said, and it's in the weeds. Sorry, Bill, but as time has progressed, has Lyft improved any of the concerns that have been expressed, like property owners not being notified, certain addresses being wrong? Has any of that, and I'm not being critical, has any of that been cleaned up or addressed, or was there a comfort level with working on any of those issues?
Are you saying since when? Or last?
No, since probably for the last 18 months or so. I think where issues were presented, has Lyft improved itself to move, to a higher standard based on some of the criticisms which may or may not have been valid?
I think I'll go back to my earlier statement of, I'd say the last 8 months have been a little difficult to be consistent as a board, just with, some of these things that we've been talking about here, as well as the vote, et cetera. But I think holistically, our board is very motivated at the outcome here to, we left it as we're ready to kind of move forward with our goals and how we're going to be approaching, individuals that want to enhance the community, et cetera. But to answer your question, yes, our communication has been effective with our website, with, calls that come in and fielding calls. We've actually transitioned to help, save some of our costs and operation costs. A lot of the staff, some of city staff has been helping us with a lot of the admin and day-to-day. So we're trying to streamline our budget now. And I don't want to say dormancy, but we want to streamline our costs and operation until we actually do have an actual project source of revenue from that component. But to answer your question, yes, our goal is to continue communications well and effectively get back to anybody that has an inquiry.
Okay. Are we done? Council? Planning Board? Lift? Okay, well, this has been a great discussion, as was pointed out. We really do have a second reading coming up, and we'll be, I'm sure, addressing this further. So that completes the study session. I'm going to take about a 10-minute break.